I think when people hear operations, they just think, you're just kind of stabilizing the ship. But I think great operations is if you're really like driving execution of like initiatives that are driving the business forward.
In Beco specifically, what does the operations look like? Who's in the team? How big's the team? What do you do?
One of my colleagues used to call me the hot potato manager. You're either like going in and setting up process and then ideally handing it over, or you're managing short-term projects that you kind of just deliver, and if they scale, then you find a proper home for them. But you're not made to be a steady function.
What would be your pitch to anybody who's listening to this in the West right now? Why should they come and work in Dubai? This is one thing I've really learned is when you change a culture, you have to lose people.
I think when people think about culture, they just think about ping pong tables and like is this a nice, friendly place to work where people are kind to each other?
Hi, I'm Sarah Hewardine and welcome to She Builds, a podcast where I interview product, growth, marketing and ops leaders to understand how they've built high-performing teams, scaled businesses and the frameworks that got them there. So today I'm joined by Michelle. Michelle is Director of Operations at Beco Capital, one of the region's early stage VC firms and one of the largest out here, managing $500 million in AUMs. She has spent over 10 years of experience in tech startups, including as Head of Sales Planning at Deliveroo. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Thanks for being here. So I think I want to dive straight into it and get to grips with kind of a lot of your experience that you've had, not just here, but internationally. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can start off understanding more about the generalist role. You know, when I look at your experience, you've got experience across marketing, sales, strategy, ops. But one thing I'd love to know is there's a lot of debate around the generalist role. I think there's a lot of people that think you should specialize and specialize early. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that argue against that. So maybe you can start off, tell us what is the generalist role? How do you feel about it? And maybe how you feel about it being this region versus maybe UK, US as well.
I'm obviously biased because I have been a generalist throughout my career, but I'm a big proponent of a generalist role. I think every business needs both specialists and generalists. Generalists typically being the minority, but I do think that you need them to basically to orchestrate and knit things together. Because the biggest business problems are cross-functional, full of grey, and a generalist role I think is generally a great resource to kind of put it all together, primarily for great execution.
When we talk about operations and somebody says, oh, I work in operations, my follow-up question is always, so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Because operations is so vast. So what does operations mean to you? And how does that differ between, being on business operations side and also the VC? Because I think the VC part is interesting because not many people actually understand what a VC does in-house.
Yeah, operations, I guess to your first question on what it means to me, like you said, I just really want to be driving excellent execution. I think when people hear operations, they just think, you're just kind of stabilizing the ship, which that's part of the job. But I think great operations is if you're, you're really driving execution of initiatives that are driving the business forward. And being that partner to your effective CEO or your GM or whatever you want to call it, that's making those big business decisions. Moving from a startup to a VC was interesting. I think the thing that struck me almost immediately was I've never been in a business where your effective C-suite, which for us is our partners, spend 50 to 70% of their time with customers. And I think, I'll say that at Beco, the partners are amazing at the company building within the firm, and they really care about it, which I'm not sure if that's the status quo. But Danny Farha has built 4, including Beco, really successful businesses. So company building is very much in his DNA. But at the same time, it's a two-sided marketplace. You have your investors and you have your founders. And they spend the vast majority of their time with those two stakeholders, on a one-to-one level. And at Beco, a lot, some VCs, you have the founders typically will spend time with whichever partner led that deal. But at Beco, every founder pretty much has access to all the partners because they operate a lot like a team, which makes the load even heavier. What does that mean for me in operations? I think the remit and the scope is actually so much broader because they rely on me much more to kind of keep things in check and to raise the flag when things need attention. I'm very grateful for the trust that the partners have put in me, and also grateful for the amount of care that they do put in when I need their input. But yeah, that's what's
and what is like in Beco specifically, what does the operations look like? Like who's in the team? How big's the team? Like what do you do?
Yeah. So we're 19 people, 11, that includes
in
partners.
Operations?
No, in total. So
okay.
it's like, VC firms are really lean, which is another thing I'll say about it's interesting running operations in a VC where it's always going to be lean. I don't see us really being more than 20 people plus minus like 5% in it ever, really. Maybe if we get to like more than $1 billion, but even then, like we're not ever going to scale to like 50 people. And so the way that you hire, the way that you structure teams, and also the way that you expect your leadership to, what their roles look like, is really different. It's not, you can't really afford to have people that are just managing. Like everyone actually needs to do
execution.
So operations at Beco means finance, so like reporting and obviously FP&A and the sort of FinOps, I would say, but also investor relations, so fundraising, and also obviously managing the regular calls and reporting with our investors for our 4 funds, people, and also our internal tech.
When we look at like I say, that's the VC space. We've obviously explored the operations as well from some of your previous roles. What are there frameworks in operations, like take away maybe like OKRs? But when I think about product growth marketing, there's frameworks for framework's sake. But are there particular frameworks that you use in operations or you have used in previous roles? And what are the ones that maybe you prefer?
One is document writing, which is popularized by Amazon, but it's just like it's a must, I think, to promote depth of thinking. Documents for me have to have a section at the top, which is like key assumptions or first principles, to promote first principles thinking. And any person, any level, if you are proposing something or making a recommendation, for me, it has to be put in a document, which also helps you just eliminate useless meetings, which, as you scale it's absolutely essential. So document writing is my number 1 practice. Number 2 is having clear roles and responsibilities, because my biggest pet peeve is poor hiring. A sort of map to go back to on what you're hiring for and what is the business need, the negotiables, non-negotiables, and the bonus. You might find yourself over hiring or hiring someone that might be a great culture fit, but they're not exactly what you need, and you set them up for failure. Sure, sometimes it can, and sometimes you might hire over budget because you think this person has amazing experience and they're willing to do this role, but then when you come down to it and you've actually hired them, they don't really want to do that role. Exactly.
So just thinking about, like you mentioned Deliveroo there as well. You've obviously worked, was it Zego? Zego. So that's I looked insurance tech in London, is it?
Yes, it is. It was a commercial motor insurance.
Okay.
A bit less sexy than food delivery. But if you like numbers, insurance is actually really interesting.
Yeah. So that was like much earlier stage startup than like a Deliveroo. What are the differences you see there, right? Because you've pretty much got a kind of more startup versus scale up. So what are the things that you notice the main difference and challenges by just being on the ground in the weeds in both of those companies?
My time there was really when they were finding PMF in they had PMF in their B2C business. The B2B business was new, and they were finding PMF there. And I was working with someone that I had worked with previously at Deliveroo, who's Matilda Nathan, who's amazing. It was really just like setting up a new business unit. And I think there was a big culture shift happening. If I remember, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but I think they were somewhere in like 250 people and scaled up to like 550. And so there were a lot more layers. And then they also had a new business unit. So it's just like the way that communication was flowing into the central team was challenging. So it was a lot of process and culture shifting, which I don't think I appreciated. Like culture is a concept that people just find really fluffy. I get challenged on that all the time, but I don't think until Zego I appreciated how important culture is for change management, and how kind of, especially in a bigger organization where people closer to the front lines will get whiplash if communication is not clear, and you have multiple strategies and lots of new people, just changing the way communication flows and how decisions are made through something like that was like a huge part of my work.
With culture, like, can you change a culture?
You can. I think at Zego, the biggest shift, which I guess every startup will go through, right? From in the beginning, you're very delivery focused. You're just spaghetti at the wall type of thinking, where you just do anything you can to grow. And then once you reach a certain size, you need to be a lot more surgical with your resources to make sure that you're now solving for impact. And I think bringing the people along that journey and reflecting that in the culture is hard, because yesterday you might have people that were being congratulated, maybe even being promoted for working really hard and doing lots, for lack of a better word. And then suddenly you're trying to shift the culture to tracking everything and being results driven. And even though they might be doing a lot of work and working hard, they're not actually delivering results for the business. And that same person is now, you've changed their universe, right? You've changed their world. And so if you're not thoughtful about that, you can lose good people. You can create a lot of just like unnecessary like drag on the company if it's not done deliberately.
Yeah, this is one thing I've really learned is when you change a culture, you have to lose people.
Yeah.
You have to lose, and you have to accept that you're going to lose people. But
Yeah.
I think you have to assume that if you're changing a culture, you're doing it for a bigger and better reason. And if people can't follow you on that journey, as much as you can try and bring people on that journey, that you're going to lose people, and you have to accept that you might lose some great people, but they're just not, they don't fit within the realms of what the business is, where the business is going anymore.
100% true. I mean, be a human being about it, but I think that's also the thing. Just be deliberate about what you want. Look at your people resource and see if they're the right people, and just do it all at once. I think not change the team over like all at once, but at least kind of have a plan, because if you have years, sort of like if you have months or years dragged out with like the wrong people in place, it's just going to slow you down.
Culture is one of those really silent things as well. Like, you can't really like synthesize a culture like very well. How do you describe this as the culture of this business? And I've seen it where a culture is soft and it allows for people to do certain things, but then maybe it breeds complacency because you're too lenient, but you don't really realize it until you're too late, and then you're like third player in the market, Yeah. But then I see it in, I see it at stake, right? And someone said to me, we were hiring Sasha, our head of people. She's amazing. And she's like, what's the culture like? And the best thing that my colleague Finn and I could say was it's a high performance culture. Mm-hmm. And I actually think most companies don't know. And I think a lot of people think you can hire a head of culture and they will just change everything. So my question is, where does culture start from? Like, not change, but where does the culture start?
I think when people think about culture, they just think about ping pong tables and is this a nice, friendly place to work where people are kind to each other? Also important, but I think a culture should really be performance. It should really drive the performance and be performance led. And I do think it has to be driven by the leadership, and not just the senior leadership. I think anyone that's a manager needs to be bought in on the culture. I know that, for Beco, the partners before my time, I think, kind of literally sat down and mapped their whole, their lives over the part, literally from birth until now, and looked at, okay, what were the moments that made me very happy? What were the moments that made me very sad? Or and then kind of through that exercise mapped their value system,
okay,
on what drives them, and then they kind of came together, and I think that was the basis of the company culture. And we have state values, which are sort of, I would say it's how we hire, in terms of people that are low ego, respectful, and ambitious. And then layered on top of that, we have a more performance-led culture on ownership and on being thoughtful and and accountable.
I think the hiring part is important. I think that's your first line of defense of protecting your culture as well. So on hiring, because you mentioned this earlier as well, hiring great people. Why is it that people should come here? What would be your pitch to anybody who's maybe listening to this in the West right now? Why should they come and work in Dubai?
Right now it just feels to me like the land of opportunity, right? Especially in tech, we are tech is it's a core pillar in the government initiatives. It has been always. The UAE government is so tech forward. They want to invest in the tech ecosystem, which is not the case in some in the more developed markets, right? Where I think they're more they're not really innovation friendly at this point in time, at least. But I also think just the lifestyle here. Like I was saying to somebody. I've had a lot of people from previous lives in the US or the UK give me a call or come for a visit because they're considering moving here. Forget the tax, the obvious tax benefit, but just the lifestyle here is, you can just optimize. I don't spend a minute doing anything I don't want to do in the UAE. It doesn't mean if I cook, then I can cook, or if I want to cook, I can cook. If I want to take a long walk, I can walk. But I don't have to walk in the rain and travel an hour on the tube if I don't want to. I can just sit in my car and maybe take a call while I'm on the road. I saw a stat. Not a stat, but I read a report the other day saying that multinational companies have said that their executives in I don't know if it was the UAE specifically or in the Gulf, are more productive than their executives anywhere else. And I think you could probably credit the lifestyle here.
Interesting. Yeah. One other thing I want to speak to you about is AI.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about AI maybe in operations? Has it changed the way you're working? How much do you think it's going to change? Do you think it's going to bring it's obviously going to bring the efficiencies, but where will it bring the efficiencies and where are you using it at the moment?
Great question, and I think a question that's on everyone's minds. In investments, obviously, it is efficient. I think in terms of how quickly the team can get to depth in analyzing a company, doing research on the space. It's a tool. I don't think that, because in the end of the day, today at least, AI is just a really efficient analyst. So you have to be able to ask it the right questions. So I by no means think that AI is going to kind of take over our jobs, at least not in the immediate term. But it's definitely bringing the efficiencies. From an operations standpoint, I think I'm thinking a lot more about our vendor selection and just making sure that the way that our data infrastructure is and the way our processes are and who owns those processes is built in such a way that we can switch out vendors quickly, because you just there are going to be so many companies that rise, fall behind, and also probably get cheaper over time. And so as a business, we want to be a little bit more more nimble and not be too reliant on one vendor, and be able to switch.
And on the VC side, so I can't remember what it was. I was looking at a report the other day. The funding in the last 12 months has actually been a lot. Are you seeing a lot in the AI space when, Beco is out there speaking to startups? Are you exploring more AI companies? Do you feel like this region has enough AI, startups going on? What does that space look like?
We have published we're in the middle of publishing a 4-part AI piece authored by one of our GPs, Abdelaziz, who has invested in AI in the US a decade ago. So he's I would say he's very insightful on the topic, and he's published part 1 and 2. Part 2 has just come out. It's about AI on the region. So part 2 is about more tips for businesses and for founders. Part 3 will be about the AI ecosystem in the region. It's something we're really excited about. There's a lot of government investment in the R&D, and I think this region is well positioned, I think, to have some really interesting AI companies come out maybe in the next 10 years. So actually in marketing, because you're obviously heading up marketing, content creation is a part of that. How are you using it?
So research, we use Perplexity. So this just helps us research with really good references. We use tools like Vizard for like video cropping. So this podcast right now, you can upload it within 30 seconds. You'll probably have like 20 bite-sized clips produced like that with subtitles, all on brand that are ready to go out. We use it for image creation. There's a lack in this part of the world in marketing for images that are local and authentic. For example, we're expanding the business to Saudi. How do you make sure all of your images look and feel like Saudis? There's so limited like stock footage out there. So we use like text to image AI, like Gen AI to create that. And now we're starting to explore video creation as well with AI. And it is incredible. It blows my mind. And this is where I think, going off topic a bit here, but for me, like in the marketing world, this is where I think the AI is going to replace a lot. It's going to replace so much. And I see how much it's already replacing now. Builds efficiencies, yeah, but it's going to it's going to take some jobs. But for me, I think what we were talking about earlier, the articulation comes out on top. If you're really strong at articulating yourself and really strong at writing and creating prompts, that will put you ahead. And the other thing is creative thinking. Like, I have never valued a creative mind as much as I do in today's day and age, because I think you can design all the most creative things if someone gives you the idea, but the ideation and the knowledge you have, that creative thinking for me is what will set people apart, like in the marketing world. So we try different things all the time, but it's really making me understand again where to hire, who to hire, because then you start to build your team around like what AI can already do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, original thought is going to be, it's going to be very clear where there's original thought and where there isn't, and that those original thinkers are going to be amplified because the heavy lifting of the execution, I think, is now done by AI.
Yeah, definitely. So my final question is something I'd like to do called Pass the Toolkit. So this is where I'd like you to share whether you read a book, a podcast, an app, or a resource, something that you would pass on to listeners, maybe in the ops space or tech, startup, VC. So what would be something you recommend for anybody?
To be honest, I used to exclusively read nonfiction and business books, and frankly, I stopped about 5 years ago because to me they all kind of sound the same. I've obviously read a bunch of books about venture when I moved to Beco, but I learn the most from speaking to amazing people like yourself, like partners. And so I don't have a resource, but I think what I have learned is as my role has expanded, as I've progressed in my career, the importance of relaxing my mind, which was a really tough journey. So I've done that through reading more fiction, and the book that got me into it was a book called Exhalation by Ted Chiang. It's short stories, and Ted Chiang used to write software manuals. So it's extremely technical. The vocabulary in that book is completely useless in like normal life because it's like so technical. But just, if you like tech and you're kind of looking for a way to kind of, still be intellectually engaged, but kind of, remove yourself from work, highly recommend that book. And they're short stories, so if you have a short attention span, then it's
good.
They're nice and bite-sized. And he really marries like really technical language and really core understanding of technical concepts with a really artful storytelling. And then the other thing is prioritizing my sleep. This Aura Ring has
I see your Aura Ring.
I have made much better decisions as a result of tracking my sleep, and I realize how much more productive and effective I am if I've had a good night's sleep. I used to just kind of think I can sleep 4 hours and I'll be fine, and for the vast majority, like, it's true, but I'll always reach a stage where I crash, and while I'm approaching that stage, my decision making does suffer. So prioritizing sleep is
key. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like we've covered so much, from hiring to ops, VC landscape, building teams. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And to anybody listening, please follow, like, and subscribe on this episode. There are also more out there. and I hope you found this insightful. Thanks for listening.